Chapter 11. Shelter for Magwitch. I spent a restless night at a hotel, worrying about the reasons for Wemmick's warning. Early in the morning, I went to see him at the castle. He told me he had heard I was being watched and that someone was looking for Magwitch. He also knew that Compeyson was alive and in London. While I was absent, Wemmick had warned Herbert to move our guest to a safer place. Clara, the girl Herbert was in love with, lived with her old father in a house on the river, quite near the open sea, and Herbert had arranged to rent rooms for Magwitch in this house. It was further away from the center of London and our home, and we could easily take Magwitch abroad by boat from there. "Our friend is there now," said Wemmick, "and you can visit him tonight, but don't go back there after that. And remember, Mr. Pip," he added firmly, "remember to get his cash. You don't know what may happen to him. Don't let anything happen to his cash." I could not explain to Wemmick how I felt about Magwitch's money, so I said nothing. That evening, I visited the house and met Clara, a lovely girl, obviously in love with Herbert. How lucky she and Herbert were! I thought of Estella and felt very sad. Magwitch seemed quieter and more likable than the last time I had seen him. He accepted all our arrangements for him gratefully. I was almost sorry to say goodbye to him. I decided to keep a rowing boat near our rooms so that Herbert and I could row up and down the river as far as Clara's house. If Magwitch saw us on the river, he could draw his bedroom curtain to show everything was all right. For the next few weeks, life went on as normal. Herbert went to work and visited Clara in the evenings. I rowed on the river and waited for news from Wemmick. One evening, instead of reading alone in my room, I went to the theatre where Mr. Wopsle was acting. He noticed me in the audience and kept looking at me in a very strange way. After the play, we met outside the theatre, and he asked immediately, "You didn't see the man sitting right behind you, Mr. Pip?" I felt suddenly cold. "Who was he?" I asked. "You remember, Mr. Pip, that Christmas Day when you were a boy? We went onto the marshes with the soldiers and found the escaped convicts fighting each other. Well, one of those two was looking over your shoulder tonight." "Which one?" I asked, holding my breath. "The one with the bleeding face," he answered. So Compeyson was still following me. I knew Magwitch was in great danger. Later that evening, Herbert and I discussed the problem and promised each other to be more careful than ever. About a week later, I met Mr. Jaggers by chance in the street, and he invited me to dinner that evening. Wemmick was there too. Mr. Jaggers told me Miss Havisham wished to see me on business, so I said I would go the next day. Then Jaggers said, "Well, Pip, our friend Drummle has won a great prize. He has married Estella." I had been expecting this news for some time, but it still came as a terrible shock. "I wonder," continued Jaggers, "who will be the stronger in the end, the wife or the husband? He may beat her." "Surely he isn't wicked enough to do that," I cried. "He may, or he may not, but she is certainly more intelligent than him. We shall see." Just then, I noticed the housekeeper putting a dish on the table. I stared at her. I had seen exactly such eyes and such hands very recently, and suddenly I was absolutely certain that this woman was Stella's mother. Later, as Vivek and I left Jagger's house together, I asked him about his employer's housekeeper. He told me that, many years before, she had been jealous of her husband and another woman and had been accused of murdering this woman. Jaggers was her lawyer, and at her trial he managed to show that she was not strong enough to kill anyone. She was also suspected of killing her 3-year-old daughter, who had disappeared. But because of Jagger's clever arguing, she was judged innocent of murder. After the trial, she left her husband and became Jagger's housekeeper. When I went to see Miss Havisham the next day, as she had requested, her house looked darker than ever, and I realized how lonely she was without Stella. She looked sadly at me.
"Tell me, Pip,"
she said, stretching out her hand to me.
"how can I help your friend? You said something about it last time."
I explained my agreement with Clarkers to make Herbert a partner. £900 still had to be paid.
"And you will be happier if I pay this?"
Much happier.
"Can't I help you yourself, Pip?"
There is nothing you can do, I answered. She wrote a check, which she handed to me.
"Mr. Jaggers will give you the money. And here, Pip,
Handing me another piece of paper.
here is a note with my name on. If one day you can write under my name, 'I forgive her,' please do it."
Oh, Miss Havisham, I said, I can do it now. We have all made mistakes. I can't be bitter with anyone.
"What have I done, Pip?"
She cried, dropping to her knees in front of me.
"I should never have brought up Stella like that, or allowed you to be hurt."
Could I ask you something about Stella? How and why did you adopt her?
"I never knew her parents.
She said quietly.
I asked Jaggers to find a little girl for me to adopt, and he brought Stella here when she was about 3.
We had no more to say to each other, and so I left. But on my way through the old garden, I had a strange feeling that something was wrong, and I ran back upstairs to check that Miss Havisham was all right. As I opened the door of her room, I saw her sitting close to the fire. Suddenly, a great flame lit the room. She turned and rushed towards me, screaming, her hair and clothes on fire. Somehow, I managed to cover her with my coat and put out the flames with my hands. I sent for a doctor who cleaned her wounds. Her bed was placed on the great dining table where her wedding cake had been, and she lay there covered with a white sheet, half conscious. I could not stay, but left her in the care of the doctor and several nurses and returned to London. My hands and right arm had been badly burnt, but although I was in great pain, I was desperate to know if Magwitch was safe.
"Everything is fine, Handel,"
Herbert told me calmly, as he gently put bandages on my hands.
"He seems much pleasanter than before. I actually like him now. Do you know, yesterday he was telling me about his past. Apparently, at one time he was married to a young woman who was jealous of another woman. There was a fight, and his wife killed the other. Luckily for her, she had a clever lawyer at her trial and was never punished for murder. She and Magwitch had a daughter whom Magwitch dearly loved. Both wife and child disappeared after the trial, and he thought his wife must have killed their daughter."
How old was the child? I asked. trying to control my excitement.
She would have been about your age if she had lived.
Herbert, I said, am I ill or mad or anything?
No,
replied Herbert, after examining me carefully.
Although you do look a little excited.
Listen, Herbert, Magwitch is Stella's father. The next day, although I felt ill and weak because of my burns, I went straight to Jagger's office. He admitted that Stella was his housekeeper's daughter, adopted by Miss Havisham to give her the chance of a better life. But even he, the great Jaggers, did not know that Magwitch was Stella's father.